How are you?
Good. My name is Dee Jenkins, and I am here from ARCH. That's the African American Resource Cultural Heritage Center. And I have with oh my goodness! Can I get excited? She's one of our living treasures. I'm with ARCH. How old are you?
I'll be 96 if I live till November the 15th.
96 years old. That is awesome. Well, we're here because this home that you're living in was a home that was once featured in the Green Book.
Is that right?
Yes. You ever heard of the Green Book?
Welcome to a special edition of WMAR2 News. I'm Patrick P.
And I'm Elsa M. From 1936 to 1966, the Green Book was published annually as a guide to safe places that Black people could travel, dine, and recreate. Many of those locations are still in use today in Maryland, including right here at the Druid Hill YMCA.
History, hiding in plain sight. Today, the Black Lives Matter movement has sparked a new age Green Book, showcasing Black-owned businesses and the need to support them.
Join us as we journey from the Green Book of yesterday to the Green Book of today.
Right now we're in front of 119 East 5th Street, and this is one of the homes that was listed in the Green Book from its inception, I believe, in 1938 up until 1966, the last edition. It was important because they called it a vacation without aggravation, for us to be able to travel freely and to avoid any run-ins with police or just to be safe. It was more of a safety feature for African Americans traveling at that time. Travel for African Americans probably was very scary, just because of all the hate. We were living in Jim Crow. We was coming out of the slavery era, and what happened? Once we began to acquire wealth, and it was no longer given back to the masters, we began to buy autos, and that's why Mr. Green came up with the Green Book, because once we started traveling, we saw that that was barriers. So this was really a necessity for African Americans to be able to just ride through the country freely, you know, just explore the USA just like everybody else does, without riding on the train, without using the bus services. So this was definitely a necessity for us to live in the United States of America and do so and do it safely.
As the popularity of the Green Book grew and hotels refused to provide lodging for Black people, more families began to open their homes to guests. And while there may have been men in the homes, it was the women's names who were listed in the Green Book.
I often say that the women and the people of Frederick, these were the pre-modern Airbnbs of what we say today. They have, you know, they had a room, they made their home accessible. I spoke to her daughter, Miss Sandra Mako, who is also a member of ARCH, and she said she recalls her grandmother housing a school teacher. She doesn't remember if any famous people came through. This, of course, our interest in the Green Book was heightened by the fact that Don Shirley, the classical pianist in the movie.
This gentleman says that I'm not permitted to dine here. I'm afraid not.
How does he smile and shake their hands like that?
Because it takes courage to change people's hearts.
Actually played in this town at TJ, which is probably a mile or so away from this location. So of course our question was, did Mr. Shirley stay here when he was in Frederick? And she said she did not know that. But she did remember that their house was open, especially after her grandfather had passed.
And just a few blocks away from the Mako home, we found another site listed in the Green Book. And when we arrived, we found Buddy's Barbershop. Did you know that you were sitting in a Green Book site?
No, I didn't until the gentleman came in and told Buddy.
Deborah Hill grew up in Frederick and had heard about the Green Book before, but had no idea that the barbershop she used to bring her little brother to, and now brings her grandson to, was once a safe haven for African Americans looking for a place to stay.
Going to the stores, the eat-in stores, you couldn't sit and eat. If you have, if you went to buy something, you buy it, you bring it home. There was segregation with the schools, even the theaters, the movies. When we went to it was called the Tivoli at the time. The blacks had to sit upstairs and the whites sat downstairs. And there were times if there was a big production and you would get a lot of white kids come in, they would come upstairs and would push us up higher. So yeah, there was a lot of segregation.
They wanted our money, but they didn't want us, and that's just the way it was. We had to go around to the back and to get served, and that's just the way it was during that time.
Buddy's uncle opened up the shop at 22 West All Saints in 1955, but from 1922 to 1947, it was the home and art studio of William and Esther Greenidge. William was most known for his portrait of Francis Scott Key, and Esther was one of the first African-American teachers in Frederick.
It's nice to know that there was all this history here, and this street was predominantly black through the, I guess, 40s, 50s, and 60s. This area right now, it's only the guy across the street there, Stanton, and myself. We're the only two owners down there that I know of.
Elmer Coppage grew up in the segregated South, knowing when to use the back door and when to keep his head down and walk the line.
Growing up in the South was kind of rough. You know, you think about your parents, what your father and your mother went through with 14 kids. I was a twin boy. Growing up, you know, in the South was kind of rough. You know, you couldn't go to school like you want to because you had to work. You was the fifth child, and you had other brothers and sisters behind you. You know, you had to go out in the field and work. My father and mother was a sharecropper, so you know it was rough.
As Elmer grew older, his parents recognized that their boys were going to end up dead or in jail if they didn't get out of the South. The racism that their parents lived through, their children refused.
The sons was going to put up with it. We left at a young age because that they know that we wouldn't put up with it. My father and mother always told me, you know, you left home, you're out there now, you're traveling. Tell you one thing what you have to do, you have to make sure you fill the tank up full of gas where you don't have to stop travel, just stay on the main road. They never stop. Because you know, I would drive, you know, driving from North Carolina. You stayed on 95, just 95 to Baltimore, 95 to Carolina, you know. You never get off the road. If I got off the main road and went down a dirt road, or I never know what might happen.
You never know what could happen. Making a wrong turn can land you in a sundown town, a place where blacks weren't allowed after the sun went down. Running out of gas could lead you into the hands of the Ku Klux Klan. Traveling without a green book can mean the difference between life and death. In Maryland, there were 101 listed Green Book sites. In Baltimore, we had 54. We met up with an architectural historian to check some of them out.
Victor Hugo Green was a New York City mailman, and his wife, Alma, was from Richmond, Virginia, and they were making trips between New York and Richmond, and they were driving, and he wanted to be sure that he knew of places where they could stop. He made a list.
A list that turned into a book, selling more than 15,000 copies each year.
Segregation affected every state, and there were listings for all 50 states because everybody needed a place to go and needed that assurance. So this is the Gordon's dining room, which was listed in the Green Book in the late 1930s to the late 1940s. The building behind me is the YWCA that was built in 1902. So in the 1947 Green Book, Mrs. Etta, or just said Mrs. E. Watson, advertised that she had a guest house. If there were too many guest requesting a room, neighborhood women would list their names at the YW or the YMCA to say that they had a room available, and Mrs. Watson's apartment is just a block, not even a block away.
With the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, blacks were given the freedom to shop and stay wherever they pleased.
And as black people joined the broader community, the once only option of supporting black-owned businesses became a second thought.
And as racial tensions have resurfaced, the push to buy black has returned.
I think the Green Book of yesterday was a really, really good example of how black folks use their experiences to create something sort of to support them in mobility. And we see that today just in a very different form where, you know, folks are on Instagram, Facebook, like creating groups to say, hey, this is black owned. You know, I'm looking for black therapists, you know, does anybody know? I'm looking for black snowballs, right? Where can I go, right? I'm looking for businesses who are supporting Black Lives Matter or who have not been supportive of Black Lives Matter, right? What was a Green Book and taking the mediums and channels that we've come to know today, social media, the internet, and like created anew.
When we come back, we'll take a look at how the Black Lives Matter movement has created a platform to highlight black-owned businesses.
It's funny to be doing this in 2020, this particular interview at this time, because driving while black was probably just as much as a negative thing then as it is now. So who knows what would have happened to them. Many people travel, many blacks, we traveled during the night back then, just because that way, you know, we really wouldn't be seen or it wouldn't be that noticeable. Police brutality, anything, they would do and say anything to you at that time. So it's almost like we're seeing this relived again.
There was a time when things seemed to be going pretty good, but I think in today's world, you know, there's a lot of animosity, a lot of racism coming out, you know, due to some unfortunate things that are happening, police. A lot of healing needs to be done.
We as a black race, you know, we won't go back.
The Black Lives Matter movement was founded in 2013 in response to the senseless murder of Trayvon Martin. Its mission is to eradicate white supremacy, combat acts of violence, create spaces for black imagination and innovation while centering black joy. Since the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, the Black Lives Matter movement has once again come to the forefront.
And one positive out of the tragedies has been the push to support black-owned businesses.
Protests have been fantastic from the standpoint of just seeing the movement, the social justice movement that we've always represented, and corporations apologizing, the NFL and NASCAR, and these things are unprecedented. White America or corporate America is opening up their eyes and saying, you know what, we see this hundreds of years of injustice, not just a few years of injustice, but hundreds of years, and they're really, I think, opening their eyes and saying, what can we do to support? What can we do to support?
This is how we model or activate our own agency. We're making the choice, right? It's a deliberate choice. It's also a way that we sort of affirm our collective power. So right now we're seeing a lot of organizations even shift their mindsets, their practices, like their norm. And so the Washington football team is a really good example of that. Where for years, right? Many indigenous communities have been calling for the name to be changed. And in this moment in time, the team, right, is actually like entertaining it. That's not by happenstance though, because we're in like capitalistic society, in that unfortunately a lot of times like lived experiences and truths are not seen as valuable as, oh, I'm losing money. That sucks. But that's also, you know, leaves a lot to be said about the power that we have. People don't like to talk about race. People don't like to talk about blackness. But let's just honor the fact that it was in the height of this sort of movement that now other social inequities, other forms of like exclusion and racism are now being amplified and corrected. And so for the folks who say, you know, focusing on blackness and race excludes other people, I push back on that, because when we focus on and center on race and the black experiences and really movement build around that, other barriers start to fall, other marginalized communities, historically oppressed communities, also benefit.
We don't want this to be a... Kezia Williams is the CEO of Black Upstart and the lead organizer for My Black Receipt. Using her social media platforms, she's created a roadmap for how to buy black and started a movement that's gone viral. Well, Black people spend $1.3 trillion annually, and up until this point, I've always said that we don't want that $1.3 trillion to be a blank check for other communities to sign. We really have to learn how to control our buying power. So what it demonstrates is what happens when we have concentrated efforts to support Black entrepreneurs, and we know that Black entrepreneurs are more likely to create Black jobs, give back to Black causes, use Black income to purchase Black assets that are passed down to Black families and also to Black communities. My Black Receipt started in response to the civil unrest that unfolded after George Floyd's murder. A lot of people were asking what could be the response in order to push the needle in regard to change. And we were like, we need to support Black entrepreneurs. But we knew that Buy Black movements in the past, one, had always been a response to corporate misbehavior. So putting a Black boy perhaps in a t-shirt that said coolest monkey in the jungle, or treating Black men like criminals and not like customers at Starbucks. And we said if we do it again, it has to be something that could be sustainable and it has to be measurable. So I think the incentive is seeing the collective, right? Currently we're at $7.4 million and growing. So we hope that Black people see that, Black consumers especially see that, and know that if it's at $7.4 million, that if we're committed, we can get all the way to $1.3 trillion.
So it really is about empowering Black people to spend their Black dollars with Black businesses.
Come on, yes, Black dollars matter, and so do Black lives. One business that has been on the receiving end of My Black Receipt's success is Calabash Tea and Tonic.
It's been amazing. Our business has shot up maybe 400% in terms of online orders. What we appreciate is people supporting us as a Black-owned business, and we appreciate being able to support them too. It's definitely platforms like My Black Receipt. It's platforms that have already been doing that work, where they've pushed Black businesses forward.
Shipping teas and tonics around the globe and enhancing the health of each customer, Sunyata opened the doors to this Tacoma location on Juneteenth, the day that celebrates when the last of the enslaved people learned of their emancipation.
Many of us don't think twice about going into a business that doesn't really care about us, and we see that once something flares up. They tell someone to take off a Black Lives Matter pin or else they're fired. Then we're up in arms and we support Black-owned businesses. It's something we need to do regularly, and Juneteenth really symbolizes the fact that it's not justice, it's just us.
Anything can be solved over a good pot of gumbo, some shrimp and grits. Babe, come on in, let me fix you something to eat, okay?
Creole Soul is a fairly new Black-owned restaurant. It's gotten lots of buzz on social media.
It was really inspirational because those two ladies that we have sitting on our mantle right there, they were the true inspirations behind a lot of our dishes. The Louisiana side of my family, of course, that's the gumbo and the po' boys and things like that. So we tried to do a healthy little mixture of Georgia and Louisiana and pay homage to our parents. So, I'm thinking back to the days of. My great-grandmother, great-grandfather, growing up in the South, not being able to be afforded an opportunity to, have a Black or have a business of their own. It's important because, we've waited and our folks have fought so long for an opportunity like this. And it's just, I think that if we don't seize this moment and take this opportunity, it's like, what was the fight for? And now I feel like it's my obligation, it's our obligation as African Americans to make sure that we are surpassing the expectations of our grandmothers and our grandfathers, and those who have basically gone before us and fought this good fight to have these civil and equal rights that we're lavishing in today. Unfortunately, we're not all the way there yet. We still have a whole lot of challenges ahead of us. But I do believe in the fact of circulating our Black dollars. I've had plenty of talks with a lot of entrepreneurs, and that Black Wall Street mentality is what I really would like to see for us once again. I really do. You know, I think that black people, we are so resilient, we're powerful. You put a struggle, a challenge in front of us, we're always gonna overcome. And I think that now is the time that we are really seeing, you know, this thing come into fruition. When I think about black-owned businesses, I think about inspiration for our younger generations. I don't think that we have enough representation of what we can actually become. And this is the great part about it, because being a business owner, especially a black-owned business, it's not just about me. It's not just about Deidre. It's not just about my family in general. It's about us as a family, us African Americans as a family.
When we come back, we'll visit one black-owned business that's been around for both versions of the Green Book. Ben's Chili Bowl has been up and running for 62 years. They've seen marches, riots, good times and bad times, and through it all, they continue to be a mainstay on historic U Street in Washington, D.C.
So we opened in 1958 when U Street was called Black Broadway. Called such because of the jazz greats who played up and down U Street. Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Lena Horne, all of them played up and down U Street. So that was the heyday of U Street. You had to get dressed up to come down to U Street. There used to be hundreds of black-owned businesses here on U Street. That was a time when the black dollar was circulating within its own community. And the other communities, in the Jewish community, and the Asian community, and certain communities, those dollars circulate 10, 11, 12, 13 times. In the black community, they say it's less than one time that the black dollar circulates. So it's more important than ever that we support each other as African Americans within our own communities. But the fact that other people have seen the injustice and whatnot over the years and the head start that people have had, that they see it's also important to support black businesses.
We actually have to be like deliberate, right? If we're assuming this idea of like sameness, everybody needs the same, everybody should be treated the same, we're not taking into account that our experiences are vastly different. Not because we're inherently less than, but because there are actual systems, history in place that have created very different experiences for us. Our policies have to reflect that.
We'll be right back.
The 1948 edition of Victor Green's Green Book started out with these words: "There will be a day sometime in the near future when this guide will not have to be published. That is when we as a race will have equal opportunities and privileges in the United States. It will be a great day for us to suspend this publication, for then we can go wherever we please and without embarrassment."
Now that publication is ended and a new one has begun. There's still much work to be done, and we hope you'll join us on that journey. Good night.
Good night.